Chapter 1. The Dream That Bled Through Stoneless. To the sand, to the silence, to the scream that never ends. There was a time, before prophecy was carved into stone, when the Force stirred not as a song but as a scream. That scream bled into the womb of a woman with no partner, no protector, no past. Shmi, her name, dust-born and dust-bound. And from her belly came not just a boy, but a fracture in destiny. Anakin, not born, not made, called Dot in the dunes of Tatooine, where suns scorch bone and shadows offer no shade. The Force curled around him like breath over a dying fire. The boy's laughter carried like broken glass across the moisture farms. There was too much life in him, too much fate. The air bent around his steps, uncertain whether to flee or kneel. He built from ruin. He repaired what others left for dead. Droids, engines, parts torn from forgotten ships. Even as a slave, he did not bow in spirit. There was a quiet storm behind his eyes, as if something immense and ancient had taken root and had yet to wake. And still, he was kind. He did not yet know the cage he was born into. He raced pods, cheated death, defied the odds, and smiled through it all. But destiny has no use for joy. It only waits for the moment to turn. A visitor arrived. Jedi robes, coarse and sand-bitten, Qui-Gon Jinn, a name woven in threads of light and sorrow. He saw the boy, and the Force thundered in his chest. No test was needed, no permission sought. He knew this child was conceived by the midi-chlorians. He whispered later, his voice heavy with awe and dread. He has no father, but the Force does not create. It remembers. It restores what once was broken, even if that restoration is blood and ruin. Anakin was not the beginning. He was the echo of something long buried. The Jedi hesitated. The boy was too old, too reckless, too close to fear. But prophecy is a chain, not a guide, and they were bound. The chosen one shall bring balance to the Force. Balance, a word spoken with reverence and no understanding, Qui-Gon wagered. Everything: reputation, honor, his own life, for a chance to free the boy from slavery. A Padras was the battlefield, sand and speed. He bet on the impossible, and the impossible answered. Anakin flew like one possessed, not by the thrill of victory, but by purpose. He did not drive the machine. He became it. He bent space, air, and time. Not even the stars themselves could have stopped him. He won, but every victory bears the scent of loss. He left his mother behind. Shmi watched him go, her face carved in sorrow and pride. She knew, she had always known. He was never meant to remain, not truly, not in this world, not in any. The ship departed. Tatooine faded to dust, and somewhere deep within the boy, the dream began to rot. On the way to Coruscant, the stars whispered to him. They spoke of Jedi, of power, of destiny, of things that could not die and things that should not live. He listened, and somewhere, in the void, something else listened back. On Coruscant, the Council examined him. The air was thick with judgment. Yoda's eyes narrowed. Mace Windu frowned in silence. They felt his fear. But what they could not feel, what they would not see, was the hunger behind it, fear of losing what little he had, fear of being taken only to be cast aside. They denied him, but Qui-Gon defied them. He died soon after, killed by the Sith. The old darkness had returned. Maul, the blade, the horned shadow. His purpose was death. His fate sealed the moment he struck down the Jedi who believed. And so Anakin was taken in by Obi-Wan, not as a son, not as a brother, as an obligation. He was trained not because the Council believed, but because they feared the alternative already. They had misread the prophecy already. The rot had begun. In his quarters at the temple, Anakin would stare out at the endless sky. Ships moved like stars, and he dreamed of his mother, still trapped in chains. He could not forget. The Jedi told him to let go, but he could not. He would not, because love, like prophecy, is a double-edged thing. In the halls of the temple, ancient statues watched in silence, their eyes hollow, their mouths sealed. They had seen this before. The rise of one who carried balance not as gift, but as blade, and the Boyne, no longer a slave, not yet a Jedi, began to feel the stirrings of a voice. Soft, familiar, ancient, it did not command, it understood. They do not see you, but I do. You are not theirs, you are mine. Voice would return again and again, through dreams soaked in blood and stars, through corridors that whispered, through visions that twisted. It called not to Anakin the boy, but to Anakin the fracture, and the Force once, a tide of combi, came a storm beneath his skin. One day he would fall, but tonight he dreams. He dreams of fire, he dreams of her voice, he dreams of the end, and the Force listens still. Chapter 2, Threads of Gold. Chains of light the temple breathes, but it does not sleep. Its towers pierce the skies of Coruscant, casting long shadows over a world that has forgotten stillness. Beneath its vaulted halls, thousands of feet move in quiet rhythm, echoing through stone worn smooth by generations of seekers. The Jedi Temple a sanctuary carved from order, discipline, and silence, and into its sacred heart walked a storm. Anakin, Skywalker, child of prophecy, slave-turned-student, carried none of the serenity expected of an initiate. The Force wrapped around him not like a river, but a tempest. Where other younglings knelt in meditation, he burned in restless thought. Where others whispered mantras, he dreamed of sand, of heat, of her, of his mother. The chains had been severed, but the wound remained. Obi-Wan Kenobi, barely a knight himself, stood as the boy's only guide. Duty chained them together, but understanding did not. Obi-Wan believed in the code, the council, the quiet path. Anakin believed in what he had seen, the cruelty of the strong, the helplessness of the good, and the emptiness that followed silence. Still, he trained. He memorized the motions of the saber, the forms and patterns drilled since the days of ancient wars. He learned to lift stones with his mind, to leap beyond the body's limit, but none of it quelled the fire. If anything, it fed it. Other Padawans whispered. Some feared him. Others mocked the favoritism granted to the chosen one. But no one truly understood him. Not even the masters, cloaked in robes older than the Republic. Their vision, sharpened by centuries, failed to pierce the simple truth. The boy was not at peace. He was adrift. The Jedi taught detachment as a shield, emotion as a wound, but they mistook his longing for rebellion. They did not see that his love was not possession, it was survival. Love was the only thing he had left. He clung to it like breath. At night, he would wake in sweat, visions of Tatooine clawing at his sleep. His mother's face, reaching, screaming, the sound of chains, the color of blood. The council sensed his nightmares, but spoke nothing. Yoda watched him from across the chamber, his expression unreadable. Trouble you do, young Skywalker. Deep, your path runs. Clouded, your future is. And that was all. They spoke of balance, yet they feared imbalance. They spoke of prophecy, yet they shackled it with law. They spoke of light, but in their halls shadows bloomed. Still, Anakin obeyed. He memorized the code. He recited the mantras. He forced calm into his voice, even as his spirit seethed. He became the Jedi they demanded, not the one he was meant to be. And still, the Force did not rest around him. It twisted, it whispered on a mission to a border moon. He faced his first true test. Raiders had taken a village, and the Council sent Obi-Wan and Anakin to resolve the matter. Negotiation failed. Sabers ignited. Anakin moved faster than sound, his strikes precise too precise. He did not kill in anger. But he did not hesitate. Later, he found a wounded child in the wreckage. She reminded him of the slaves he'd known on Tatooine. Her eyes, too old for her face, her hands trembling. She looked at him not with fear, but with hope. And in that moment, something ancient stirred in him. A hunger not for power, but for control. He wanted to end pain. He wanted to fix the galaxy, not through diplomacy, through will. The Jedi praised his actions. They did not see the fire behind his smile, and so the days passed, each one a thread, some golden, some rusted. He was draped in robes of light, trained in the way of peace. But peace was never his path. Peace was a mask, and behind it the Force churned like a storm beneath crystal in secret. He began to bend the rules. Small things at first, a Force push, sharper than necessary, a command given instead of suggested. His emotions unchecked gave him clarity. Strength, he was not reckless, he was righteous. Or so he believed. And then, amid a campaign on Naboo, he saw her again, Padma, the girl queen who once trusted him with her people's fate. Now a senator, veiled in grace and steel. She smiled when she saw him, not as a Jedi, not as a warrior, as Anakin, and something within him unraveled. They spoke of old memories, of childhood, of choices never made. And in the shadow of the Capitol's towers, the boy who was never allowed to love began to fall, but no one saw. Not yet. The Council saw his rising talent, his unparalleled gift. They nodded in approval, blind to the fault line growing beneath their feet. For the Jedi do not look down, they look forward. Always forward. And prophecy, it does not warn. It waits. So Anakin rose, polished armor, flawless missions, whispers of a future master. But in his sleep, the voice returned. They bind you in golden light, but you are forged for flame. You are not a servant. You are salvation. The Force trembled, the threads tightened, and the dream once of freedom became a chain of its own. Chapter 3. The shadows beneath the code is recited. But not all who speak it believe. There are tenets etched in crystal, taught to every youngling from their first breath in the temple. There is no emotion, there is peace. There is no ignorance, there is knowledge. Words spoken like armor, worn like ritual. Yet words can wither. They can fracture under weight, and beneath those ancient words, shadows slithered Anakin, now no longer the child slave, nor the wide-eyed initiate, walked the halls of the Jedi, not as one of them, but as something set apart. A living question, a prophecy clothed in human flesh. He spoke their phrases, trained in their forms, obeyed their decrees. But behind his eyes, a storm churned. There were whispers in the meditation chambers, in the corridors between pillars older than the Republic itself. The boy was too strong, too reckless, too attached. The masters debated, should he be guided or watched? And in the darkness, beyond the temple walls, something else listened. The Republic was unraveling. Systems broke faith with Coruscant. Wars no longer whispered, they screamed. The Jedi, once peacekeepers, were dragged into a role they had long forgotten. Generals, soldiers, symbols of control, and Anakin, young, brash, powerful, fit the need to well. He was sent to worlds already bleeding. His saber carved paths not just through enemies, but through decisions others hesitated to make. He saved thousands. He destroyed thousands. In his victories, the Republic saw hope, but hope can blind. Anakin was not growing into a Jedi. He was becoming something else. There were moments, brief, almost invisible, when the line between justice and wrath blurred. A warlord surrendered. Anakin's hand tightened. A soldier struck a civilian. Anakin responded with fire, not words. These acts were hidden, excused. War, they said, makes monsters of all men. But Anakin was not made. He was born of the Force itself, and something ancient within him began to awaken. He questioned the Council's orders, not out of rebellion, but conviction. He saw failure in their indecision, suffering in their caution. They asked him to wait, to trust, to meditate, but he had seen slavery. He had lived it. He knew what inaction cost. Obi-Wan tried to guide him, gentle corrections, warnings veiled in kindness. But even Obi-Wan could not see the fracture. He had been raised in the code, bound by it. He could not imagine its end, and Anakin had already begun to walk beyond it. One evening, deep in the archives, Anakin found himself standing before the holocron vault. The keepers watched him, but said nothing. He was the chosen one. He was allowed. He reached for a Q-bread, pulsing, forgotten. It opened, and within it, voices, long silenced, spoke once more. Tales of Jedi exiled for love, of masters who defied the code to save innocence, of a time when the Force was not divided, but whole, both passion and peace, light and dark. He listened, and for the first time, he understood. The code was not truth, it was a cage. He did not speak of this to Obi-Wan, nor to the Council. They would not listen. They could not listen. Their vision was narrow, their path set, their fears too great. But someone else was listening. Someone cloaked not in robes, but in shadows. The Chancellor, Palpatine. He invited Anakin often quiet meetings behind the Senate's closed doors. They would speak of politics, of war, of the Jedi, and slowly, carefully, Palpatine began to peel the layers from the young knight's mind. He spoke with understanding, not condemnation. They fear you, he would murmur, because they cannot control you. He praised Anakin's instincts, called him wise beyond the masters, called him the only Jedi who truly felt. Anakin would laugh at first, dismiss it, but the words stayed. They do not trust you, but I do. The seed was planted, and the Force, once vibrant around the boy, began to darken, not in hatred, but in confusion. Love was forbidden, but he loved. Anger was dangerous, but it made him strong. Attachment was weakness, but it gave him purpose. Was he a Jedi, or was he something the Jedi could never understand? And then the dreams began. He saw fire again, but not of Tatooine. He saw Padme, her face twisted in pain, her hand reaching for him, blood on her lips. A child's cry, then silence. He awoke in terror, night after night. But he told no one, not Obi-Wan, not the Council. Only one listened, only one believed, Palphinus. He spoke of legends, of Darth Plagueis, the wise, of power over death itself, of how the Jedi feared that power, feared any knowledge that broke their chains. Anakin did not yet ask for more, but in his silence, he begged, and far from the temple, the Force whispered, not in light, but in hunger. In the Grand Council chamber, Master Yoda stared into the stars, troubled, young Skywalker. A darkness clings to him, not hate, not yet, but pain, deep like roots. Mace Windu folded his arms. He is the chosen one. We will guide him. But prophecy does not bend to guidance. It waits. And underneath the chants and lessons and ancient codes, the Force began to tremble. Balance was coming. But balance is not peace. It is reckoning. Chapter 4. Fire in the Garden of Peace. In the quiet between wars, desire took root. The Jedi Temple Grand, towering, ancient, was a monument to discipline. Its gardens bloomed in silence. Its fountains whispered calm. Within its walls, emotion was pruned like weeds. Attachment, love, longing, forbidden, not out of cruelty, but caution. The Order taught that love leads to fear, fear to anger, anger to suffering. But the Force does not follow commandments. It moves where it wills. And in the heart of the garden, Anakin dreamed not of the stars, but of her Podum senator, defender of Naboo, the girl he had once called an angel. Now, a woman carved of strength and sorrow, carrying burdens that mirrored his own. They met again in the twilight of peacetime. Formal smiles, political pleasantries, but underneath, memory burned. She remembered the boy with fire in his eyes. He remembered the queen who stood without fear. Their meetings were brief, guarded, eyes watched, whispers stirred. But the heart moves in secret, and the force of her listening did not stop them. He began to find excuses, assignments near her sector, messages sent, cloaked in duty, time carved from chaos, and when the stars aligned, they were alone in her presence. Anakin forgot the code. He forgot the temple, the war, the chains of prophecy. With her, he was not the chosen one, not the warrior. Just Anakin, and in him, she saw not the Jedi, but the boy who raced pods and dreamed of the sky. They tried to resist, swore to walk separate paths. But passion, once stirred, does not slumber. And so, beneath the vaulted stars of Naboo's lakes, they wed in secret. The Force shuddered, not in anger, but in warning. Anakin hid it, all his vows, his love, his fears. He smiled before the Council. He trained harder, fought fiercer. But inside, the walls of his mind began to crack. His dreams returned, not visions of love, visions of death, Padme screaming, her belly swollen with child, blood on her hands, his hands. He awoke gasping, trembling, alone in a chamber lined with stone. The temple offered meditation, the Council offered silence, but he needed answers, not riddles. Obi-Wan sensed the unrest. "You're distracted," he said during training. "Is something troubling you?" Anakin shook his head, but the shadows grew longer, and in the darkness, the voice returned. "They will not save her. They never could, but I can." He sought solace in Palpatine's words, now more frequent, more intimate. The Chancellor no longer pretended to be neutral. He encouraged the bond between Anakin and Padme. He called it natural, human. "Powerful love is not weakness," he said. "It is the root of strength. The Jedi fear that strength, but you were born to transcend them. He spoke of legends again, of Darth Plagueis, of the power to keep loved ones from dying. Anakin did not question why the Chancellor knew such things. He only listened. The seeds of desperation were sown, and from desperation all ruin blooms. The Council, sensing unrest, assigned him to missions far from Coruscant. They spoke of trust, but their eyes revealed doubt. They feared his closeness to the Chancellor. They felt his unrest, but refused to see its cause. Anakin grew colder, more volatile. The battlefield became his confessional. Clones followed him not as a commander, but as a god of war. He won victories at great cost. He saved planets and scorched them alike, but always, in his silence, he thought of her, of Padma, of the life growing within her. She had told him, quietly, joyfully. He had smiled, then wept, because he knew the future, and it ended in fire. He returned to Coruscant before a Senate session. The stars were turning, the war reaching its climax. Grievous hunted, Dooku fallen, the Republic desperate. He stood in Padme's chambers, the city lights flickering behind her. "I'm afraid," he said. "I see you dying, and I can't stop it." She held his hands. "It was just a dream. But the Force does not dream. It remembers." The Council summoned him the next day. They offered him a seat, not as master, but as symbol, a gesture, a political concession. He burned. "You insult me," he said. "I have done more than any of you." Their expressions were stone. "You are too close to the Chancellor," Mace Windu replied. "Your judgment is clouded." The Force cracked like glass. Something inside him fractured. He left the chamber with silence around him, but fire within. Padme noticed the change. "You're distant," she said. "You're angry, I'm afraid," he answered. He held her that night, not as a husband, not as a Jedi, but as a man clinging to the last light left to him. And beyond the temple walls, Palpatine waited. The trap was nearly complete. The Jedi watched Anakin with suspicion. Anakin watched them with contempt, and the Force, which once danced like wind through the temple gardens, now lay still, waiting for fire. Chapter 5. War feeds the hollow ones. The galaxy burns not from rage, but from absence. The Clone Wars spread across the stars like rot beneath the skin. Planets once serene became battlegrounds. Cities fell to ash. Children were trained as soldiers. And the Jedi, those sworn to peace, became warriors cloaked in duty. Anakin Skywalker rose swiftly in this new order, hailed as a general, a hero, a symbol of victory. But beneath every triumph, something was lost. The Force that once flowed gently through him now howled in silence. The light dimmed, not in defeat but in compromise. He commanded with brilliance, but brilliance alone is never innocent. Anakin's strategies spared lives, so many lives. But he also took them without hesitation. He chose action over caution, punishment over patience. His decisions, swift and unrelenting, became the edge of the Republic's blade. Clones revered him. Jedi respected him, but the Force began to recoil. He was called the hero with no fear, but he feared one thing, one death. One woman, Padme. She watched the Republic unravel from her Senate chamber, her hand resting on her growing belly. She spoke against the war, pleaded for diplomacy, for mercy. But her words fell into chambers long deaf. The Senate applauded vengeance. The Republic had grown used to blood. Anakin listened from the shadows. He admired her courage. He feared her naivety. And each time she stepped into danger, each time she was met with scorn or threat, the fear within him twisted tighter. He could not lose her, not like his mother, not again. The dreams returned, darker now. She cried out his name through flames, a child screaming, a cradle overturned. He awoke with his fingers curled like claws, breath caught in a whisper of her fading voice. He turned again to Palpatine, the Chancellor's office. Always dim, always warm, had become a sanctuary of forbidden clarity. The Jedi do not understand life, Palpatine said softly. They pretend death is a part of the Force, but you know better. I saw her die, Anakin whispered. You will see it again, unless you act. And then the truth offered not as threat, but as invitation. There are ways to preserve life. The Jedi would never teach you, but the Sith, they have studied deeper truths. Anakin flinched at the word. I'm not one of them, no. Palpatine murmured, not yet. But you are not truly one of the Jedi either, are you? Anakin said nothing, because the truth bare and cold was already planted in him. He was drifting between names, between faiths, between futures. The Council felt this, but their fear blinded them. They refused to trust him. They demanded he spy on Palpatine. They offered him secrecy, but no love. Tasked him with betrayal, but gave no faith in return. He returned to them with clenched teeth and a gaze grown sharper. You will do this, Skywalker, Windu said. If what you say is true, the Chancellor is dangerous. But it was too late. The line between ally and enemy had already blurred in Anakin's mind. He rode between worlds, leading clone forces into burning cities, his saber carving through metal and bone. Droids fell like leaves. Civilians cheered his name, but he barely heard them. He moved like a blade held by fate itself, not man. And in his silence, he counted every moment Podmore moved closer to her due date, every second closer to the vision. He began to keep secrets from Obith-1.0. Laughter between them had faded. Brotherhood had become formality. Obi-Wan was kind, yes, loyal, always. But he could not understand. Not the weight of prophecy, not the agony of love, not the taste of fear disguised as clarity. In the catacombs of his heart, Anakin no longer asked, what would the Jedi do? He asked only, what must I do to save her? One mission led him to a world shattered by war. A settlement had turned against both droid and clone. Anakin led the assault. They resisted. He ordered the entire leadership destroyed. Obi-Wan questioned it. They would have surrendered, he said afterward. They had their chance, Anakin answered. The temple noted it in silence. A warning, a pattern, but still, they did not act. Palpatine did. The Chancellor named him his personal representative to the Jedi Council. A political move, a test. The Council allowed it but denied him the rank of Master. An insult, a humiliation. Anakin stood in the council chamber, his voice shaking with fury. How can you do this? This is outrageous. It's unfair. But fairness is not a Jedi teaching, nor a Sith one. Only power is constant. Only consequence, absolute, and still the war spread, feasting on star systems like a beast with no stomach. Every death a prayer. Every planet fallen a litany in the great forgetting. The Jedi fought. The clones obeyed. The Chancellor smiled, and Anakin drifted, not falling. Yet, but he could feel the pull, like gravity, like fate, like fire at his heels. The Force trembled, watching, and the Garden of Peace, once green and serene, had become a wasteland of Ashdod. Chapter 6. The Mask of Many Eyes. There is no lie more dangerous than the one that wears your trust. Beneath the Senate's golden spires, in chambers veiled in silence, Chancellor Palpatine watched the Republic die one truth at a time. He did not raise a saber. He did not summon storms. He whispered, and from his whispers, the Chosen One began to unravel. Anakin Skywalker, war hero, Jedi Knight, legend cloaked in uncertainty, sat more often in the Chancellor's shadow than in the Council's light. There, in that warm, curated quiet, Palpatine peeled back the layers of the boy who had once raced pods through dust and dream. You are the only Jedi who sees the galaxy as it truly is, the Chancellor said, his voice a balm. The only one with the strength to end this war. The only one with the clarity to bring peace. The words echoed through Anakin's mind like scripture. Palpatine did not doubt him, did not question his attachments. He praised them, called them proof of humanity, evidence of a deeper connection to the Force, something the other Jedi, in their cold detachment, had long forgotten. He did not name the dark side. He did not need to. He told stories instead, legends forbidden in the temple, tales never transcribed, of Darth Plagueis, a Sith Lord so powerful he could manipulate the midi-chlorians to create life and prevent death. Anakin's heart stopped to stop death. Podmes death. His voice trembled. Is it possible to learn this power? Not from a Jedi, came the reply. The words settled like Ashdod. No accusation, no seduction, just truth. Anakin did not speak of it to Obi-Wan. He barely looked at the Council. Every breath he drew near, the Jedi felt more distant than the last. He meditated not on peace, but on how many futures he would shatter to save one life. And the Chancellor, always near, always watching. The mask was slipping now, not falling, not yet, but the lines were visible. Palpatine began speaking openly of the Jedi's corruption, how they sought control of the Senate, how they used their roles in war to gather influence, how they feared Anakin's strength because it stood apart from theirs. Anakin tried to argue, to resist, but doubt, once seeded, bloomed swiftly. They are planning to betray me, Palpatine whispered. They want to remove me, and when they do, they will move against you. Anakin said nothing, because deep inside, he believed it. At the temple, the Jedi asked him to spy on the Chancellor to betray the one man who had never doubted him. Even Obi-Wan came to him, quiet and strained. The Council is asking you to do something you don't want to do, he said. I understand, but please, just listen to them. Don't let this tear you apart. Anakin stared into his former master's eyes. He wanted to speak of the dreams, of the dread that curled around him like a serpent, of Padme's life hanging on the edge of an unseen blade, but he could not. He turned away, because Obi-Wan still believed in peace, and Anakin had already begun preparing for war. On the night of Grievous's defeat, when the war's final shadow seemed to lift, Anakin returned to Palpatine's chambers. The city below pulsed with light, but inside only stillness. And then the mask fell. Palpatine named himself a Sith Lord, Darth Sidious, the architect behind the Clone Wars, the master of both sides, the hidden eye watching from the beginning. Anakin stepped back. You're the Sith Lord. Yes, you're the one we've been searching for. I am Anakin, ignited nothing. He said only, you know how to save her, don't you? The room went silent. Palpatine smiled. Yes, Anakin did not kill him. He fled. Back to the temple, to the council, but not to confess fully, only to reveal a peace. The Chancellor is a Sith Lord. The Masters did not rejoice. They did not act in unison. They moved slowly, cautiously, too cautiously. Mace Windu assembled a strike team. He did not ask Anakin to join them. Stay here, he ordered. If what you told me is true, you will have earned my trust. But Anakin had already given his trust to the one they now moved to destroy. He paced the temple like a beast in a cage. If the council killed Palpatine, the knowledge would die with him, Padma would die with him, the vision would become truth. The force thundered in his chest, and somewhere beyond the sky, in the deepest current of the cosmic breath, a choice had already begun to calcify. The chosen one stood on the edge of prophecy, not as its fulfillment, but its victim, and the mask of many eyes of love, of fear, of loyalty, of fate shattered in silence. Chapter 7. The temple burns in silence. Prophecy is not light. It is flame waiting for breath. The night fell heavy over Coruscant, but the stars offered no peace. Inside the Jedi temple, the walls trembled not from battle, not from wind, but from the unseen weight of what had been set in motion. Anakin Skywalker sat in silence, alone in the council chamber, the suns long set behind him. His breath was slow, as if beneath water. He looked not at the city, but at the distant chamber of Padma, where life grew in secret, and death crept ever closer. Mace Windu had gone to arrest the Chancellor, but that word re-echoed as hypocrisy in Anakin's mind. The Jedi claimed law, but practiced control. They spoke of peace, but waged war. They preached attachment, but demanded obedience. And so, when the vision struck again, Padman dying, crying out, reaching for him through fire, he stood, he left the temple, he entered fate. Palpatine's office was bathed in lightning when Anakin arrived. Mace Windu's saber raised, 3 masters dead at his feet. The Chancellor crouched, weak, broken, pleading. A mask within a mask. He's too dangerous to be left alive, Windu said. Anakin's heart shattered. He heard the Force screaming in silence. If he dies, she dies. He stepped forward, torn, trembling. I need him. Windu moved to strike, and Anakin struck first. The blade sliced through the wind, through morality, through everything he had once believed. Mace Windu fell, cast into the night, his body swallowed by the city below, and with that blow, Anakin fell. Palpatine rose not, a frail old man, but something ancient and vast. You are fulfilling your destiny, Anakin. He did not speak as a master, he spoke as prophecy. Anakin knelt. I will do whatever you ask. Just help me save her. Help me save Padme. Palpatine placed a hand upon his head. You shall be known as Darth Vader. The name rang like iron, not a title, not a future, a chain. The galaxy shifted, and the purge began, under red twilight. Darth Vader led an army of clones to the temple gates. No banners flew, no horns cried, only the sound of footsteps, strong marching toward the heart of the Order. The temple guards were the first to fall. They did not understand. They barely had time to speak his name. The doors opened, and the betrayal began. Vader moved without pause. His saber ignited not in justice, but in judgment. Jedi Masters, Knights, Padawans, even the younglings, they pleaded, they hid, they screamed. But he was beyond mercy in the Force. The temple became a storm. The statues of ancient masters cracked. The fountains turned red. Holocrons shattered. Their voices silenced forever. The youngling's room, still warm with laughter only hours before, now choked with smoke and silence. And at the center of it all, Vader's breath steady, human still. But Holodot, he was not weeping, he was not questioning. He was gone from across the galaxy. Order 66 was executed. Clone battalions turned on their Jedi generals. Friends became executioners. Sabers fell into dirt. Forests echoed with blaster fire. Worlds once protected by the Jedi were now witness to their extinction. Yoda felt it deep in exile. The wound in the Force, Ki-Adi-Mundi fell. Plo Koon fell. 1,000 Jedi screamed in silence. Obi-Wan survived, barely end in Padme's chamber. The stars dimmed. She felt it, though no one had spoken. She touched her belly, and the child within turned. Night blanketed the temple. Smoke rose from its highest spires. The archives, the scrolls, the voices of 10,000 years all turned to ash. And in the council chamber, where peace had once been debated in stillness, Vader stood alone, not as a man, not yet a machine, a shadow. A prophecy reversed. He looked out upon the city, the Republic now falling under Palpatine's grasp, the galaxy surrendering to a new empire, and behind him, the children of the Force lay dead, not from hatred, from necessity, from fear, from love. The temple did not cry out. It only burned, and the Force so long ignored. So long misread drifted into silence, watching, waiting, for the one spark that still dared to rise. Chapter 8. The Ashes. Remember, the light fire forgets what it burns. But the ashes do not. The temple lay in ruin. Spires shattered. Silence thick with the scent of scorched stone and lifeless robes. In the Force, it was as if a star had died, a sacred place reduced to embers, and beneath those embers, a memory, still breathing, but none came to mourn. Not yet, on Mustafar, the black world of fire and furnace, Darth Vader stood as his master's executioner. Sent to extinguish the last remnants of the separatist leadership, he did not hesitate. No questions, no mercy. One by one, those who had once funded and fed the war machine fell to his blade. The war, in truth, had ended the moment he fell to his knees before. Sidious. This was not cleanup. This was ritual, a rite of passage into damnation, and the screams echoed down the metallic halls like incense in a tomb. Anakin Skywalker had loved once, but love had become rot. He had feared death, and in fleeing it, became its servant. Now Mustafar's lava rivers reflected him not as a man, but as a shape cloaked in black eyes, gold with hunger. He stood not in victory, but in stillness. The last gasps of the Clone Wars fading beneath his boots, Palmed arrived before the fires cooled. She came not with accusation, but with tears. The ship's ramp lowered, and she ran to him, blind to the blood that clung to him like a shadow. Anakin, she whispered, you're going down a path I can't follow. He wanted to hold her. He wanted to say he did it for her. He wanted to lie, but the truth had already drowned his soul. I'm doing this for us, he said, voice cracking beneath the weight of the lie, to protect you. You're breaking my heart, she answered, and then Obi-Wan stepped from the ship. The betrayal, real or imagined, roared to life in Vader's heart. He saw them not as friends, but conspirators. He saw the dream of his family shattered beneath another Jedi lie. Anger bloomed. He turned against them both, choked the breath from Padma's throat with the Force, watched her crumble to the ground. Obi-Wan attacked. The duel was not a battle, it was a eulogy. Sabers clashed, not for honor, but grief. They fought through fire, over rivers of molten death, through metal that groaned and screamed beneath the strain of prophecy, turned against itself, master against apprentice, brother against brother. The Force, wild and wrathful, danced between their blades. But fate had already chosen. Anakin fell, his limbs severed, his body broken, his hate still screaming from the bank of the lava flow. Obi-Wan stood above him, weeping, not with tears, but with the silence of someone who had lost everything. "You were the chosen one," he cried. "Was said that you would destroy the Sith, not join them." Anakin's face, burning, snarled back, "I hate you." Obi-Wan left him there. He could not finish what had already ended. He took Padma, barely a livand, fled into the stars. The Force wept in a secret medical station far from the eyes of the Empire. Padma gave birth to children, Luke, Leia, Light. Torn from a dying star, and with her last breath, she whispered what the Jedi never understood. "There's still good in him." And then, silence. At the same moment, in a chamber of black and steel, the Sith performed another resurrection. Sidious stood above the wreckage of a man once called Anakin. He did not mourn. He rebuilt metal, replaced flesh. Tubes replaced veins. Pain became constant. Breath became mechanical. And when the mask was sealed, when the final switch was turned off, Vader rose. The scream that followed was not human. It was not sorrow. It was the echo of prophecy devoured. He asked of Padma, "Lead, it seems. In your anger, you killed her." Vader stood still. Then the room buckled with the scream of a soul rupturing. And in that moment, Anakin Skywalker truly died. But the Force does not forget, and in the ashes of love, light still stirred, hidden. On Tatooine, Luke was placed beneath the twin suns. Leia, veiled in Alderaan's palace, grew in peace, and in the shadows, a prophecy twisted, waiting for its final truth. Because the Force does not end, it only circles. And in time, even darkness forgets that it was born of light. Chapter 9. The silence between two suns. When stars are born, they do not speak, but the Force listens. Far from the Empire's gaze, beneath the burning twin suns of Tatooine, a child opened his eyes. His name was Luke. No titles, no prophecy, no weight, just breath, just beginning. He was placed in the arms of Owen, Lars, and Beru. Whitsun, simple people, hardened by heat and dust. They did not speak of the child's origin. They did not speak of the name Skywalker. They simply raised him, and in the distance, beyond the dunes, an old man watched. Obi-Wan Kenobi, no longer a Jedi Master, no longer a general. He lived in silence, in hiding, in exile. The man who once stood against Darth Vader now wandered the desert like a ghost beneath robes faded by regret. He did not train. He did not teach. He waited, and in that waiting, the Force whispered, but only faintly, because the galaxy had changed. It was no longer a place of balance and peace. It was a wound. The Jedi were gone, hunted to extinction. Their temples desecrated, their holocrons shattered. The Sith ruled not from shadows, but from thrones. Palpatine, no longer Chancellor, was now Emperor, his face twisted, not by age, but by truth revealed. The galaxy bent beneath his will, the Senate a hollow stage, the laws mere illusions, and beside him stood the Enforcer, Darth Vader, once a name of prophecy, now a mask of punishment. He stalked the stars in silence, dressed in black iron and the agony of survival. His breath mechanical, his gaze unblinking. He did not speak of Padme, he did not speak of Anakin. That name was gone cut from the script of the Force. To the galaxy, he was death made flesh. To the Emperor, he was a weapon. To himself, he was nothing but the Force patient, eternal. Did not forget, in Alderaan, Leia Organa grew within the walls of royalty, cloaked in dignity, unaware of her birthright. She spoke with fire, even as a child. She questioned injustice. Her voice echoed the mother she never knew. The Force stirred around her. It stirred around Luke. It stirred and waited, because the Chosen One's story was not over. It had merely shifted shape. Obi-Wan knew. He watched from afar. In the caves, in the sandstorms, in the cries of the Tusken Raiders, he heard echoes, not of war, but of destiny. He watched Luke play with skyhoppers, chase shadows across dunes, stare at the horizon as if waiting for something to call him home. He looked like his father, but he laughed like his mother. Obi-Wan did not smile. He remembered Anakin's promise. I will be the most powerful Jedi ever. He remembered the way the temple burned, the children, the silence, the flame. He whispered to the Force, asking questions it no longer answered. And in his solitude, he prepared, not for battle, for inheritance. One day, the boy would be ready. One day, the name Skywalker would rise again, not in vengeance, but in balance. Yet elsewhere, darkness deepened. The Empire built machines, vast and cruel, moons of metal, weapons of extinction, entire systems silenced, languages forgotten, cultures erased. The Sith did not rule with chaos, they ruled with precision, and Vader, though silent, obeyed every order, but in the quietest part of his soul, beneath armor, beneath scar, beneath hate, something flickered, a memory, a voice, a child's cry, not Padme's, a new voice, one never held, one never named. He asked Sidious once, quietly, if any children survived. The Emperor said nothing, and so Vader believed his line had ended, that the galaxy would never know what he had lost. But the Force had hidden the children from even its own wounds. Leia's defiance grew, Luke's dreams deepened, and Obi-Wan, now older, watched as the suns set each day, whispering to a name long buried. Anakin, not in hate, not in hope, but in mourning, because even ghosts can grieve, and even ashes can remember. And the Force, vast and unending, waited for the moment when the silence would end, when one child would rise and call the darkness by its true name. Chapter 10 Echoes in the halls of the dead heaven. In silence, the Force speaks. Even in death, it remembers. The Jedi were gone, their temples buried beneath stone and shadow, their names scrubbed from records, their deeds whispered only by those too old, too broken to forget. Across the galaxy, what once was order had become myth, a cautionary tale, a heresy. The Force mourned in stillness, but not all echoes fade in the dark corners of the galaxy. Fragments remained of knowledge, of memory, of defiance. Hidden in caves, lightsabers buried in sand, voices trapped in crystals, still chanting rites no ears remained to hear. And sometimes, when the veil between past and present grew thin, the spirit stirred. It was to one of these places that Obi-Wan journeyed in secret, deep into the caves beyond the Jundland wastes. There, beneath stones shaped by time and sorrow. He knelt before the relics of the Order, bones of those who had come before him, a rusted hilt, once held by a knight who died with his Padawan's name on his lips. And there, in the silence, Obi-Wan reached into the Force not with demand, but with plea. He sought not power, he sought understanding, and the answer came, not from above, but from within, a whisper. Qui-Gon. The name barely passed his lips, and yet the air shifted. A presence familiar, wounded. Wise, not a vision, not a ghost. Something between breath and memory. You were right, Obi-Wan said, eyes closed. He was the chosen one, and we lost him. No reply, only silence deep, painful, sacred. He remained there for hours, days perhaps. Time melted in that place. The Force thickened. It did not speak, but it held him, held his grief, held his failure, held the memory of a child with sun-bright eyes and a destiny carved in fire. Elsewhere, far above the sands, Darth Vader hunted. Not Jedi, there were so few. Left but symbols, shrines. The Emperor sent him to extinguish remnants, to erase the past. He entered one such ruin, carved into obsidian cliffs, where monks once meditated on the living Force. He crushed the altar, but as he turned to leave, a light ignited, not from weapon, from memory. A recording flickered and grainy. A Jedi Master, long dead, speaking to his students of balance, of unity, of how the Force is not divided, but whole. Vader stood still. The words felt familiar, the voice almost comforting. He crushed the projector with a single gesture. Sparks died like stars, but as he turned away, the memory lingered. His master's voice, Obi-Wan, still alive, still watching, and somewhere if Obi-Wan lived so might Padme's child. He asked the Emperor again, and again he was met with silence. Not denial, not truth, only the mask of control. And so Vader turned inward. He returned to Mustafar, not to the castle he had built there, no. That would come later. He returned to the bank where Anakin had died. He stood where his limbs had burned. He stared at the rock where Padme had fallen, and he did not move. He said no prayer, he made no vow, he only remembered, and the Force, ancient and infinite, watched its chosen one stand on the grave of himself, not to mourn, to bear witness to what he had become, to what still remained, because prophecy does not end in fire. It ends in return, in a whisper, in a name, and far away, beneath a quiet sunset. Luke Skywalker sat on the edge of a sand dune, eyes lifted to the stars. He did not yet know his father's name, but the Force did, and in the breath between heartbeats, between galaxy and dust, it began to awaken. Chapter 11. The blade sleeps in the dust. The Force does not forget its children. It buries them in shadow, and waits. Tatooine remained unchanged, a graveyard of suns and sand, wind and memory. Nothing bloomed here except endurance. The moisture farms hissed with quiet labor. The stars passed overhead, indifferent, but beneath the monotony, something stirred dormant, unformed, yet ancient. Luke Skywalker was 16 now. The boy who stared at the sky was becoming the man. The galaxy would remember, but he did not feel chosen. He felt trapped, caged, just another name in the desert, dreaming of escape and hearing only silence. He had never touched a lightsaber, never heard the name, Vader, never been told what had come before, only the stories. His uncle refused to tell, and the quiet, watchful presence of old Ben Kenobi. The villagers called Ben a wizard, a recluse, a lunatic, but Luke saw the way his eyes lingered too long on him, the way he moved with purpose, even in stillness, as if waiting for a signal only he could hear, and far above, in the belly of the Empire, that signal was forming. Leah Organa stood in white, fire in her eyes, even as she walked among senators who smiled through their own cowardice. She was only a teenager, but already dangerous. Her words cut through pretense. Her silence made tyrants sweat. She did not know why the Emperor feared her. She did not know why. Lord Vader's gaze lingered on her ship longer than any other, but the Force knew, and it drew them both, brother and sister, closer with each breath. The rebellion, scattered and secret, had begun to spark. Small victories, stolen plans, hidden fleets, but they needed something more. A symbol, a light, and it waited in the desert, where no one thought to look. Obi-Wan watched from afar. Luke's laughter reminded him of Anakin before war, before death, before fire. He kept his distance, but every year it grew harder. The boy was too much like both his parents, reckless like Anakin, compassionate like Padma, and the galaxy was changing. Obi-Wan could feel it. The Empire was building something vast, terrible, a weapon not just of metal, but of fear, a final tombstone for the Jedi, the Republic, and the prophecy that had once glowed with hope. He did not know when the time would come, but he knew it would, and so he waited. He practiced old meditations in the cave. He spoke to the Force in whispers sometimes. The Force whispered back, a voice familiar. "Train the boy," he answered. "He's not ready." "He must be," the voice replied. A presence, not memory, but Qui-Gon, the teacher long dead. Now a shadow within the breath of the galaxy. Obi-Wan feared the boy's bloodline, feared that if Luke touched the power within him, he might awaken the same hunger that had consumed his father. But he feared the silence more, because in that silence, the Emperor grew stronger and Vader surged. He did not say it aloud, but deep within, he was hunting for something, a presence, a light that haunted him. He had felt it during a recent skirmish, barely a flicker, but the Force had spoken, not with words, with memory, a birth scream, a heartbeat, a son. Vader said nothing to Sidious, but in the private chambers of his obsidian thoughts, he began to trace the edges of the galaxy. With new hunger, Tatooine, he avoided it, not because he feared it, but because it was the wound he could not cauterize. The place where he died, the place where he began. And so, both watched Obi-Wan from exile, Vader from silence, the boy from the dunes, and the Force. It waited, because the blade of destiny was still, buried, sleeping in the dust, waiting to be lifted by a hand that had not yet learned what it meant to kill. Chapter 12. The Awakening of Broken Names. In every shadow cast by the past, there is a name, waiting to be spoken again. The galaxy did not tremble when the blade stirred in the dust. It did not weep when the Force exhaled. It only shifted. Something ancient had begun to stir, not in the halls of the Jedi, nor in the palaces of the Sith, but in the heart of a boy who did not yet know who he was, Luke Skywalker. He awoke each morning to the same twin suns. He fed vaporators. He scraped sand from engines. He listened to stories of war as if they were legends, but they were not legends. They were memory, buried in silence. The galaxy had tried to forget, but the Force had not. And now, the Force was preparing to remember, Leia carried a message, a plea carved in light, a stolen secret one that, if delivered, could ignite rebellion across the stars. But Vader knew. He had seen the movements. He had felt the tremor in the Force when her ship vanished. He pursued without question, because something in her presence unnerved him, not in fear, in recognition. He stormed the vessel himself, his black armor making the metal tremble beneath his boots. The soldiers fell before him. The crew fled, but she stood firm. Leia Organa. No. Saber in her hand, only fire in her voice. She did not yield. She did not cower. He questioned her, but she answered with defiance, and something inside Vader hesitated, only for a breath, only for a flicker. But the Force noticed, and elsewhere, the message found its way to the Sans.R2-D2.A droid. Small, dented, stubborn, carrying the hope of galaxies, and in his wake, destiny moved toward a boy who still believed he was ordinary. Luke found the message, a voice, delicate but resolute. "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope." And in those words, the past cracked. The name awakened something in the old hermit who lived beyond the dunes. Kenobi.Obi-1 no longer denied what the Force had long whispered. The time had come. He sought out the boy, revealed the blade, the lightsaber of Anakin Skywalker. "This was your father's," and Luke, still too young to understand, still clinging to dreams, held it without knowing the weight. A weapon not of war, but of inheritance, forged in hope, drenched in blood. He asked what happened to his father. Obi-Wan lied. He was betrayed and murdered by a young pupil of mine, a man named Darth Vader. The lie was not cruelty. It was protection, because the truth was still too powerful to be spoken. Not yet, not while the boy still smiled, not while he still hoped, but the galaxy would not wait. Stormtroopers traced the droids. The homestead burned, Owen and Baruchard silent. Lost. Luke stood before the ruins of his childhood, smoke rising in spirals, and something inside him shattered. He turned to Obi-Wan. "I want to learn the ways of the Force, and become a Jedi like my father." The path was chosen, and the Force, vast and ancient, surged like breath across stone. Elsewhere, Vader felt it. A tremor, like a name whispered across. "Time, Skywalker." He paused. He did not speak it aloud. He did not dare. But the name remembered itself, and it began to awaken in secret halls. Yoda stirred in hidden chambers. Bail Organa watched the stars, and in the void, the Force drew lines between all things, father and son, sister and brother, master and ghost, and the blade, once buried, now hummed with light, not to kill, but to remind that even the broken can rise, even the lost can return, even the fallen can be found. Again, Chapter 13, the cave that speaks in mirrors. Before a Jedi faces the galaxy, he must face himself. And in the darkness, all names become the same. They traveled far from Tatooine. Luke, Obi-Wan, the droids, and the smuggler with debts trailing behind him like ghosts. Aboard the Millennium Falcon, the stars whispered ancient truths. Luke sat often in silence, the lightsaber resting in his lap. It buzzed softly when he touched it, like it remembered him, but he did not yet remember himself. Obi-Wan watched. He trained the boy gently, slowly, a few steps, a few breaths. Not with drills or lectures, but through stillness. He taught the way. Of the Force, not as a weapon, but as breath, as presence, as surrender. Luke struggled. He felt something inside, him vast, coiled, untamed, but it frightened him. It reminded him of flame, of a rage he didn't understand, of a silence too loud to speak through. And somewhere beyond the stars, Darth Vader felt the same. He reached through the Force, brushing its surface, seeking the presence that had whispered from the dust. It was growing brighter, clearer, his prey, or his heir. The question remained unanswered, for in the dark both answers were true. The Falcon arrived at the ruins of Alderaan, a planet gone, an entire world erased, the Death Star, vast and eclipsing, drifted nearby like a wound in the sky. Leia was there. Obi-Wan could feel her, and Vader felt him. Kenobi, the past flared alive, and so they entered. The prison became the battleground. Leia was rescued, stormtroopers fell, and in the belly of that artificial world, two shadows met. Obi-Wan stood before Vader, no longer the boy he had trained, no longer the voice of reason, no longer Anakin Skywalker, only death. "You can't win, Darth," he said softly. "If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine." They fought not with fury, with memory. Every blow echoed with what had been lost. Every clash of blade was a hymn to what once was brotherhood. And then Obi-Wan lowered his saber. He looked to Luke, watching from afar, and he chose to become something greater than form, to pass into the Force. Vader struck. The robe fell empty. There was no body, no scream, only silence, only surrender, only the beginning. "Luke!" shouted. But Obi-Wan's voice did not vanish. It lingered. "Run, Luke, run." And they did. The Falcon fled into stars. Leia stared into nothing. Luke sat in grief, his eyes wide with what the Force had taken. And given he lit the saber again, it hemmed not in defiance, but in vow. He would learn, he would rise, he would answer the call that now burned in his blood. Elsewhere, the rebellion prepared. They had found the plans. They had found their symbol. They did not yet know his name, but the Force did. And deep within the molten heart of the Empire, Vader stood still. He did not speak of Kenobi's death to Sidous. He did not gloat. He only asked questions of the Force. Why did the boy feel so familiar? Why did his presence echo with a sound Vader had not heard in decades? Why did the lightsaber the one Kenobi carried feel like home? And in the dark recesses of memory, a word surfaced. "Son." He did not say it. He did not believe it. Not yet, but the Force believed it. And it watched Luke Young grieving, rising walk slowly into his fate. Soon he would face the cave. Soon he would see his reflection. And when he did, the face in the mirror would not be his own. Chapter 14. The tree that dreams of serpents. The Force does not divide light from dark. It reflects the heart that enters it. The swamp world of Dagobah lay hidden beneath layers of shadow and rot. No star charts named it. No hyperlane passed near. It was forgotten, shrouded, veiled by a presence that twisted the Force into something deep. And dreaming. Here, the living Force breathed heavily, like lungs long sealed beneath water. The roots of the world drank memories. The fog carried voices. The earth itself remembered pain. It was here that Luke Skywalker came, guided by Obi-Wan's voice, thin now and far away, but still present, still tethered to him like thread through mist. "You must go to the Dagobah system. There you will learn." From Yoda, the Jedi Master who instructed me." Luke obeyed, though he did not understand. He came in search of a warrior, but found an old creature, bent by age, his eyes bright with riddles and mourning Yoda, one of the last. He did not smile when he saw Luke. He did not bow. He peered through him, as if looking into a wound. This one. Long way to go, yes. Reckless, like his father. Too much anger, too much fear. Luke stood tall. "I'm ready." Yoda's eyes narrowed. "Ready, are you? What know you of ready? 1,000 years has the Force flowed through Jedi, older and wiser than you, and still they fell." Luke swallowed. "I'm not afraid." And the old master turned away. "You will be." Training began not with sabers, but with breath, not with battle, but with stillness. Luke ran, fell, rose again. He balanced stones and thoughts alike. He lifted the X-Wing, only to watch it sink again. He reached into the Forsand sometimes. It reached back. But beneath all of it, the questions remained. Why was he chosen? What had his father become? Who had Darth Vader been before the name? And then the tree called to him. A cave, twisted in roots, hidden deep in the swamp. A hollow wound in the Force, where dark energy slept like a serpent. Yoda watched him approach. "What's in there?" Luke asked. "Only what you take with you." He entered. The air thickened. His breath turned to mist. The walls pulsed with dread. And there before him stood Darth Vader, alive, waiting. Luke did not question. He drew his saber. They fought in silence. The clash echoed like thunder in a dream. With a final stroke, Luke severed Vader's head. The helmet fell, and the face within was his own eyes, his own mouth, staring lifeless at him. Through the visor of death, he gasped, stumbled, backward. But the cave did not mock. The vision did not lie. It whispered truth, that the line between Jedi and Sith is as thin as breath, that the seed of Vader lies not in the name, but in the choice, that if Luke moved blindly, without knowledge, without control, without understanding, he would become what he sought to destroy. He fled the cave. Yoda said, "Nothing." The lesson did not need words, because the Force was not a path, it was a mirror, and now the boy had seen himself. Elsewhere, in the dark corridors of the Executor, Vader stood before the stars. The Emperor had summoned him. "There is a great disturbance in the Force." "I have felt it," Vader replied. The Emperor's voice oozed with venomous pleasure. "We have a new enemy, the young rebel who destroyed the Death Star, the son of Skywalker." The silence froze, the name spoken aloud. Vader did not breathe. He did not speak, but inside the storm rose. Skywalker, his name, his son, still alive, still hidden, but no longer lost. The Emperor continued. He could be a great asset. He could be turned. Vader bowed low. If he could be turned, he would become a powerful ally. "Yes," hissed the Emperor, "he will join us or die." But Vader had already begun to think beyond. He would find the boy, not to destroy, not to share, but to reclaim, to reach across the chasm of time and power, and fire and pull his son into the shadow. A father's wish, a Sith's plan, and the Force trembled because prophecy, long buried, had begun to crack open once again, and in the dark, two destinies turned toward each other, each believing they would save the other. Chapter 15. The Hand That Reaches Through Fire. The bond of blood is deeper than allegiance, older than the code. older than the blade. In the end, the Force binds, or it burns. The galaxy churned beneath iron and fear. The Death Star was gone, but the Empire endured, vast and venomous, its roots tangled through every system, its grip tightening in silence. Rebels whispered hope, but Vader moved swiftly, coldly. His breath echoed down corridors like judgment. He sought one thing now, Skywalker, his son, his blood, and in the Force. That bond was no longer hidden. It pulsed. It beckoned Luke, now no longer boy, carried the weight of the name he did not yet understand. Yoda trained him, reluctantly, carefully, but not fully. For even Yoda feared what might happen if Luke knew too much, too soon. You must complete the training, he warned. But Luke felt a pull, a wound, a cry. He saw them, his friends, suffering. Han, frozen, Leia, captured, Cloud City, wrapped in shadow. And in the heart of it, Vader. He felt his presence like a voice in his bones. I must go to them, he told Yoda. If you leave now, help them, you could, but you will destroy all for which they have fought. Obi-Wan's voice echoed in the fog. This is a dangerous time for you, Luke, and if you choose to face Vader, you will do it alone. I cannot interfere. But Luke chose. He left, not in defiance, in devotion, the very devotion that once turned Anakin to darkness. He flew alone to beat Espinin into a trap, into fate. Cloud City hung like a ghost in the skies of Bespin, bright and beautiful on the surface, but beneath it, corridors ran red with betrayal. Vader was already there, waiting, watching, and the moment Luke stepped into that chamber, the air froze. They met not as strangers, not as soldiers, as shadows of a story long buried, saber to saber, breath to breath, father to son. The duel was not fast. It was not elegant. It was raw, brutal, a test not of skill but of will. Vader did not strike to kill. He struck to teach, to punish, to invite. Luke fought back, wild and desperate. I will never join you, he shouted. But the force between them cracked, because the truth was already bleeding through the fight. They clashed on the gantry sparks, showering into the void, and then, with a single sweep, Luke's hand was severed. The saber fell. He screamed. Vader stepped forward, not in triumph, but in revelation. There is no escape. Don't make me destroy you, Luke, gasping, bleeding, trembling, stared into the face of the machine. Vader's voice dropped. Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father. He told me enough. Luke cried. He told me you killed him. And then the galaxy stopped. No, Vader said. I am your father. The Force shattered the prophecy, roared. Luke's scream pierced the dark. No, that's not true. That's impossible. But the Force does not lie. It only waits for truth to be heard. Vader stepped closer, voice almost soft. Join me, and together we can rule the galaxy as father and son. But Luke, broken, betrayed, let go. He fell into silence, into sky, into the unknown. Caught barely by fate, he survived. The Falcon rescued him. Leia's voice found him. But something in him had changed. He clutched the place where his hand had been. He looked at the new saber, still unbuilt. He stared at the stars. No longer with wonder, now with grief. Now with knowing Yoda, far away, felt the shift. Unexpected, this is. Obi-Wan's spirit, heavy with regret, spoke. That boy is our last hope. Yoda closed his eyes. No, there is another. And in the dark chambers of the executor, Vader stood alone. He did not celebrate. He did not boast. He reached through the stars, through the Force to his son, and whispered, "Luke." And somewhere, across the night, Luke heard, and though his heart bled, he did not answer. Not yet, but the bond had been forged, the fire had been lit, and the blade would soon return. Chapter 16. The Mask That Weeps Without Tears. What becomes of a man who forgets his name? What becomes of a soul whose breath is no longer his own? The Force remembers, even when the flesh cannot. Darth Vader stood at the edge of his thoughts, watching stars wheel silently beyond the obsidian window of the executor. His reflection was not his own. The mask returned only darkness. No eyes, no expression, only breath, rhythmic and unending. Like the pulse of a dying world, he had spoken the truth. Skywalker was his son, not a theory, not a possibility, a certainty written into the very bones of the Force. And now the truth rang louder than any saber, heavier than any chain. Luke lived, and the child he had never held, the child Podman, died whispering. A bout had grown into a weapon of light dot. Vader had reached for him, and Luke had let go, but the connection had not broken. It pulsed across the stars, from father to son, from son to father, a thread that could not be severed by time or rage. Vader returned to the Emperor in silence. Sidious welcomed him with a smile that was not a smile. "You have done well, Lord Vader. The boy will come to us." But the Sith Lord did not bow. As lo this time, the name Skywalker had awakened something that even Vader could not name. A crack in the iron of his will, a whisper, a ghost. He returned to Mustafar, to the fortress he had built atop the place of his death. He stood alone in the meditation chamber, sealing the black armor away, bearing what remained of his flesh to the bitter air. The scars sizzled in the cold. His breath came weakly, his body a ruin. But in the Force he listened, and he heard Padma, not in words, in memory, in the way. Luke stood with fire and compassion, in the way Leia defied tyrants without. Lifting a blade, he asked the Force, "Is this what was meant to be?" The Force did not answer, because the answer was already alive, and across the stars, Luke built a new saber, green as the hope he still clung to, forged not in imitation, but in identity. No longer the boy from the farm now. The Jedi, now the one prophecy had hidden in silence. He returned to his friends, calm and grave. The laughter of youth was still there, but behind it, knowledge, suffering, purpose. He came before Jabba the Hutt like a shadow. He freed Han, not with blasters, but with conviction. He faced monsters and fires, and never once looked back, because he knew what was coming. Endor, the forest moon, a final trap. The Emperor waited there, coiled in the belly of a new Death Star. This one, larger, crueler, masked in half-completion. And beside him, Vader, silent as ever, a blade waiting for its wielder's command. But Luke came, not to destroy. He came to surrender. Leia begged him not to. "You're wrong, Leia. I have to try." He did not say why. He could not speak what. Only the Force had shown him that there was still light in the one called Vader, that Anakin Skywalker might yet awaken. Vader met him in the forest. Luke's hands were bound, but his voice was steady. "I know there is good in you," Vader's breath rasped. "It is too late for me, son." But the word son wavered, and in the Force it trembled. The Emperor would tempt him. The dark side would reach again, and Luke would face it not with rage, but with mercy, not with ambition, but with love. And somewhere within the cage of armor and scar, Anakin listened. He was not yet ready to rise, but he no longer slept. Chapter 17. The throne at the end of all things, in the heart of darkness. The light does not fight, it waits. The throne room aboard the second Death Star was built not of stone nor metal, but of silence. The windows framed stars like distant tombs, and the walls echoed only one voice, ancient, patient, venomous. Emperor Palpatine. He sat hunched beneath the weight of unseen centuries, his fingers steepled like a spider in its final web. His gaze held galaxies hostage. His smile was not joy. It was prophecy fulfilled, or so he believed. Before him two shapes, Vader the shadow, Luke the sparked, father and son brought together at last. Not by love, not by war, by design, the Emperor's design. So, he hissed, the son of Skywalker has come to me. Luke stood firm, unarmed, unbending. I will not fight you. But the Force swirled. Darkness wrapped around the chamber, thick as old blood. The Emperor spoke of destiny, of the weakness of the Jedi, of the power of the dark side. And as he did, he gestured, and before Luke, his friends, dying, burning, a fleet, outnumbered, overwhelmed. Your fleet is lost, the Emperor crooned. Your faith, misplaced. Luke's breath trembled. Strike me down, Palpatine said. Give in to your anger. Let the hate flow through you. Vader said nothing, but the bond between them thrummed like a dying star. Luke reached out, and the saber leaped into his hand, and for a moment he gave in. He struck. Vader's blade rose to meet him, and the two clashed, again and again across the black marble floor. But this time it was not training, it was not survival, it was prophecy, unfolding beneath the eyes of the dark. Luke fought not as a student, but as an equal, and Vader, for the first time in years, struggled. They battled across the throne's edge, into shadows, into silence. Vader's rage boiled, his strength monstrous, but Luke's fury burned hotter. You underestimate the power of the dark side. Vader growled, but Luke was not listening to him. He was listening to the pain. He saw the chains on his father's hands. He felt the scars beneath the armor. And in his anger, Luke drove Vader back. He struck again, and then with a scream, he severed his father's hand. The saber fell. The stump sparked, and Vader collapsed to his knees. Luke stood over him, panting, trembling, victorious, but his breath caught, because the wires in ruin where Vader's hand had been matched his own, a machine, just like him, just like what he would become. He turned slowly to the Emperor Dot, eyes full of fire. Good. Palpatine purred. Your hate has made you powerful. Now fulfill your destiny. Take your father's place at my side. Silence. Luke stared at his own hands, at the weapon at the edge, and then he stepped back. He cast the saber away. You failed, Your Highness, he said. I am a Jedi, like my father before me. The word struck harder than any blade, and in that moment, Anakin stirred. But Palpatine roared. Lightning erupted from his fingers, not fire, but agony. A scream of the Force itself. It tore into Luke. It burned into his bones. He cried out, body writhing. Vader rose. He watched. One stood in pain, one sat in pleasure, and between them, him. He looked to Luke. He saw Padmam. He heard her last words. There's still good in him. And in that moment, Anakin Skywalker returned. Not in strength, in choice. He turned, he seized the Emperor, and as the lightning danced across his armor, tearing into flesh and circuit alike, he lifted him and cast him into the abyss. A scream echoed through the shaft. The dark side shattered, and then silence. Vader collapsed, smoke rising from his chest. Luke rushed to him, kneeling beside the wreckage that was his father. Help me take this mask off. You already have. The voice was softer now, weaker. Human Anakin looked at his son, with eyes no longer gold, but clear. Tell your sister. You were right. Luke wept, but not in defeat. In recognition, the Chosen One had fulfilled the prophecy, not by destroying the Sith with strength, but by remembering love, by choosing light. And as the Death Star burned around them, Anakin Skywalker faded, not into nothing, into the Force. And the Force wept, because its lost child had come home. Chapter 18. The star that returns to silence the Force does not end. It folds, it sleeps. It sings in the bones of all who've walked its path. Whether in light or in shadow, the second Death Star crumbled. Fire rose through the heavens, metal turned to ash, but in its ruin something bloomed. Balance, not peace, not yet, but balance, the still breath between the clash of opposites. Luke Skywalker carried his father's body across burning corridors. Not the armored monster the galaxy had feared, but the man beneath. Anakin, fallen, now risen, once Sith, now free. He burned him on Ender's moon, not in hatred, in right, in farewell. The flames whispered into the trees, into the stars, into the waiting silence of the Force. There was no ceremony, no banner, no republic to speak of him, only a son bowing his head to the smoke that carried his father away. And in that sacred fire, a circle closed. The prophecy, long feared, long misunderstood, fulfilled itself not in conquest or dominion, but in choice. Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One, had been born of mystery and ended in mercy. For decades, the galaxy had asked what the prophecy truly meant. Some said he would destroy the Sith. Others said he would bring ruin to the Jedi. But the Force was not so narrow. It asked only for balance, not silence, not one side's victory. Balance. Luke looked to the stars that night. Leia stood beside him. He knew now who she was, not only a princess, but his sister. Skywalker blood in her veins, fire and dignity. Padme, reborn. They did not speak of Vader, not yet. The name was still too sharp, but they mourned, and the Force listened. In the shadows of the trees, spirits stirred. OBI-1. Yoda. And at last, Anakin, not armored, not broken, a figure of light, humble and whole. He looked to Luke with sorrow and pride, and then he was gone, but not lost. The Force does not lose what it remembers, it only reshapes it. The Empire fell, the people rejoiced, but in the silence that followed, Luke stood alone again. The last Jedi, but not the final one. He built no throne, he crowned no victory. He returned to the stars, to the roots of the Order, to the questions that had never been answered. What is light without the dark? What is strength without compassion? What is destiny without choice? He did not build a Jedi temple. Overnight he listened to the Force, to the wind, to the wind, to the echoes of those who had come before, and the cries of those who would come after, because peace is not given, it is tended, and the Force, that endless tide, would always rise again. And somewhere, deep beneath time, in the memory of all things, the voices remain, whispers of Tatooine suns, of Mustafar, Ashdot, of temple chants long silenced, of a boy who became a blade, of a blade that became a shadow, of a shadow that became a father, and of a son who remembered the name that galaxy had tried to erase. Anakin Skywalker and the Force fell silent, not in ending but in breath, until the next awakening. ***, the end.